Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. Here we have something new here. I'm starting without a roll-in. Welcome to the new atmosphere and a time in life where we're introduced by our youth. And one of the main reasons we're doing a show about Ronald McHenry. Welcome. Ron's on Zoom today, and we're going to talk about his early beginnings here at NAN, how I first met him, and the progress we've made in the last year, well, the year of DEI, which is on the mainstream of America today. Welcome to the show.
Welcome everyone.
Hey,
Thank you for having me on this experience. God bless you to all, to Mr. Graham and to Mr. Gilchrist.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited to talk about the fight back. Right, we've seen how there's been this attempt to go back to a time in America where everyone definitely was put in different roles of segregation. We know that the American project still has work to do, but we've been pressing forward to make this a multicultural, diverse America for all. Um,
Look at the camera.
I'm with the National
what do you
Action
say to
Network,
that?
led by our founder and the president, Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton, who's been an activist, it seems like, for over 100 years, but he's been doing it for 60 years. And just proud to be under his leadership and his direction. They say the young are strong, but what is strength without wisdom? And
Mm.
so I'm happy that we have that type of guidance. Uh, you know, Someone was talking to me about how we need to write a book as young people who are involved in nonviolent direct action
mm.
because a lot of the older generation fought these fights, but the younger generation has no clue on how to get involved. And so every Thursday we've been organizing to keep the fight for DEI alive, just keep it alive. We've been fighting this for over a year, but before we saw this fight, we saw many other fights happen. I really stepped up my activism game as a teacher. I taught in the DOE science for 14 years. Once I started seeing the attacks on the sections of the voting rights, and John Lewis was alive at the time,
Mm.
and I knew that it bothered me and that I needed to do something about it. So what encouraged me at that time was to do a painting exhibit so that we can, talk about it. Sometimes talking about it straightforward, you don't get all the ears and audiences and conversations. But I knew that through the arts, that I can bring a
Mm.
diverse group of people together. And I made a collection called "A Movement of Faith," which was inspired by a sermon or a keynote speech I heard from Dr. Sharpton, talking about the history of the movement. And I painted figures like Jimmy Lee Jackson. I painted figures like John Lewis and others, and current figures like Stacey Abrams, just to really raise the question of, are we at the time trying to really roll back a lot of our civil rights gains? And at the time, a lot of folk were, some people educated on this issue, some people weren't. There wasn't this aggressive, as we see today, sort of attack. But I was just trying to warn people, if we don't come together and stand on the same side of a diverse America, then we will see rollbacks. And at the time, I didn't think that maybe my art show would have gained traction, but I knew that I was going to do what I could to get the message out. And I think that when you are sincere in what you do, people will come to hear what you have to say. And at that time, it was a successful art collection, and I was blessed to be able to go from Long Island to New York City with my collection, just trying to raise awareness. However, listening to many of the conversations and having many conversations with different people of different backgrounds, we then seen the Supreme Court roll back Roe v. versus Wade. Then
Mm.
we've seen them come after affirmative action. Then we've seen assaults on words like woke, words like CRT, and banning books. We saw the attack on librarians, the attack across the country on teachers, We've seen the attack against institutions, and that was unfortunately just the beginning. Some people were hoping that it would stop there. And I began to raise my voice around these issues because I always say to people, when we look at Nazi Germany, in Germany, when we see the atrocities that happened, uh, people, the reason why that government in Europe was able to be so successful was that groups of people were silent when they watched other groups of people
Yeah.
be
Hmm.
marginalized.
Yeah.
And so by the time their neighbor was marginalized, they couldn't do anything to empower themselves against the government when they were being marginalized because their neighbor was not there anymore. And
Hmm.
so I'm trying to say that we need to uh, collaborate and come together and organize with our neighbor, no matter
Hmm.
what they look like, no matter what their background is, to find a way forward through this age of disinformation, through this age of uh, separatism, through this age of the divide. I was, in moments of despair and moments of trying to figure out where do we go from here. I find delight in reading Bible scriptures, and I had to realize that God had always made a way out of no way, and that He always will have His glory no matter what's going on. And as I thought about the book of Exodus, and how the people were enslaved, and how God had made a way for them to come out of slavery, God had parted the waters for them to from them to go from the land of Egypt for them to then wind up in the wilderness. And sometimes we want our heroes to come the way they came before,
Hmm.
but when God had used the next prophet up, that was Joshua, and he had to go through some waters. He didn't part the waters the same way Moses did. He actually had to go into the water, and then it parted. So, we have to figure out what is God having us to do in this season so that we can get through and go to the promised land.
Well, Ron, you have shown us what the youth is about and how you're the ones that we've been waiting for. You have our history, and you have the zeal and the energy to show we elders there's promise. Now, if the entire black youth were similar to you or even close to your energy level,
Yeah.
we would be in a much better place. So I had you come on this morning, especially because I discovered my first videotaping of you at National Action Network. The first time, I've told you all the time, I've told you many a time when you were looking for encouragement or you needed encouragement, that I saw the light in you the first time I saw you. Now we're going to play that video, so I want you to see what I saw these many years ago. I don't know how many years it was. A couple? Was it 2? The first time in there?
It's about 5 years ago at the moment.
Not this one that I shot.
Yeah, about 5 years. Well, you let me know.
I don't
It was
know.
2005, but
I'm an old man.
A few
I don't
years
have...
ago. A few years ago.
All right, let's play the video and we'll talk about it.
Their names have gotten forgotten in history. To bring about a movement, we need to all do our part. So we all need to use the gifts that God has given us. I've been painting since I was 2, no real formal training, and I felt in my heart to spread the message through art. There are many platforms of art that have marginalized black artists for years. So part of my movement, a part of my walk and journey is to try to decolonize some of these spaces by presenting our story and our history. I started off with this exhibit creating Jimmy Lee Jackson. And everyone can see Jimmy Lee Jackson here. And we see the American flag behind him, and we see a scuffle. Jimmy Lee Jackson is pinnacle, especially talking about the right to vote. Rights to vote are being marginalized all over the country. And a lot of us forgot that the right to vote came through the blood of Jimmy Lee Jackson. Jimmy Lee Jackson was a deacon, a Baptist deacon, and he was protesting for the right to vote, where he was chased down by a mob, shot and killed. The killing of Jimmy Lee Jackson is what caused an outrage of the country and for the march from Selma to Montgomery. So again, everybody say Jimmy Lee Jackson. Jimmy Lee Jackson. So as a thought for today, I'm going to say, let us remember. That is a thought that I'm going to use. Tell your neighbor, say, let us remember. So let us remember Jimmy Lee Jackson. So Jimmy Lee Jackson's death caused national outrage. People came together. But in particularly, people came together in Ms. Boykins' house, Amelia Boykins. This was right here. She's a bit older, but when she was young, she was much like Stacey Abrams, a very big person who gathered people for voter registration. And at Amelia Boykins' hometown in Alabama, we had Dr. King, his organization, and Hosea Williams and John Lewis come together in her house. And because of strict segregation laws, they all had to stay at her house, and they had meetings about the march from Selma to the march for voting rights. So we all know about the famous Edmund Pettus Bridge. Martin King said, you know, the rest of you guys go out there, and I'll meet you guys down the road. So John Lewis and Hosea Williams went out forth, and as they were on their way, they were beaten. We all know about that story, but a lot of people forget to talk about Amelia Boykins. It was much worse for her because she lived in that town and she had to deal with the ridicule afterward. But we cannot forget her contribution as far as her activism, her faith. The next role, and I also put her next to Stacey Abrams, not only because of the activism, the marching for voting rights, but to me, their work is very similar, and the work is about continuity. The work is not about what happened then, but the work is about picking up the torch and keeping it on, right? So you always have to ask your question, what are you doing right now, right? That happened then, what are we doing now? As we move on, I painted a young John Lewis and I painted an old John Lewis. And I get a lot of questions about why I position them or what are they saying. And John Lewis was determined as a young man. But as the Reverend says, the movement is not a sprint, it's a marathon. His whole life he spent fighting for the right to vote and the rights for all of our rights to be what they were. He became Congressman, John Lewis, and by the end of his life he was seeing voting rights stripped. So it's up to us to take on that fight. Behind us, I have the Reverend Al Sharpton, and let us remember, right, the work that he's done over the years. There's some names on this canvas that predate the Reverend Al Sharpton, but it almost seems like every generation we got to deal with the same mess. And I don't know what you see when you see those names. Well, when I see those names, I see my name. I see the names of my family member. It could be you, especially if you're a person of faith. The Bible says, how can you love your brother? How can you say you love God whom you have not seen, but yet say you love your brother who you've seen every day? So we have to take this cause as a cause of our own. And behind the name of this painting is called Strange Fruits. It comes from the song Strange Fruits. But the fruit that's on the tree is us. And from that fruit, they built wealth and they built this country. So it's time that we take on the march, we take on the responsibility of the movement and the God-given gift that he's given us. And I'm not going to be before you long. I want to say thank you, and that is all that I have for you today.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Janet just showed up. Corey's. There's Ron.
Okay.
Hello.
Welcome back. A few problems, But that was Ron, his first time speaking at National Action Network. The first time I've seen him, I saw his brilliance. So now this is a few years later, and Ron's ran a demonstration on DEI for 68 weeks. Tomorrow is the 68th week. Is that
Correct.
right?
68 weeks tomorrow. You've been counting, right?
Yeah, I've been keeping up with you.
I remember when I came to NAN, you didn't really pay too much attention to me. So I
You thought I did.
You come to notice me along the way. I don't know if it was the way I wore my glasses, but I thank you for noticing me.
Yeah, well.
It took a whole art show, but it's okay.
You boosted your own ego. That I didn't have to help you. You just came in there like a youth enthusiast, and it was a blessing. And I've seen many of people come through NAN. You understood that, and they come and go. But everybody comes with their own agenda. But you had a spiritual agenda.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Should I stop talking? Huh?
Ashley.
Ashley's on?
No, she's not coming.
Oh, okay. All right. My director was saying a few words.
Recording in progress.
Okay. One of those days. Welcome back. Welcome me back. So what we were talking about was Ron's progress report. So Ron, what do you think of, what does our future look like to you? As far as the DEI?
Progress report, I'm thinking like, this is school where you get a progress report and give it to your parents.
Well, you know I'm an OG.
I thank you for.
You're talking to the OG.
The progress report goes to you, Granddad.
I always call you my boy.
I think that what does progress look like? You know, growing up, it wasn't easy. I wouldn't say I was one that was picked on. However, and I was never one in the community to fight people, but I've always been a person that really believed in fighting back.
Right.
No matter the challenge, no matter if it was 2 or 3 people, no matter if the person was bigger than me, I always believed in standing your ground, because if you don't, it's going to be worse for you later on.
That's right.
Right. Those people that took advantage of you today are going to do the worst tomorrow.
That's
right.
I
always was determined that I was going to stand my ground, even if it meant a fight, and even if I couldn't win, but I was going to make sure that we both lost something in that, and that there was really no declared winner.
That's the only way to be if you're black in America. I'm telling you, that's the basic ingredients to survive. Have good heart and God in your heart, and you don't take mess. You be fair to people, and you'll get through it, no matter what the challenge.
I can take a little mess, but I can't. We can't have habitual line crossing.
Well, back in our day, the 70s and 80s, you couldn't take
beat people up.
No, you had to if you didn't.
The right, the left.
This man's from Brooklyn.
That's right. Ron, it's just seeing
so is
you.
Al Sharpton from Brooklyn. So
right. Seeing you, we talked about passing the baton.
Yeah.
Julian,
right.
who used to be at NAN, Julian is in law school now. He's preparing himself for the continuation of the battle for our people as an attorney. There are 1,000 ways to do what has to be done. And I remember back when Bill Jones passed, he was Reverend Sharpton's pastor growing up. And Bill Jones was Martin Luther King's lieutenant.
Right.
And I remember talking with him over the years with his deep bravado voice.
Yeah.
Well, when I was with Martin, but he always carried a gun. Martin wasn't about violence, but Bill Jones carried a gun. But in his passing, they had the men and women that came out of his pastorate who had become pastors and ministers. He inspired over 100 men and women to go into the ministry. One man produced that volume of people. Look at Jesus Christ. He picked 12, 11 were good, and from that you have the church globally. So the understanding that you have a calling. And when you fulfill your calling, your life is the best that it can be for you. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. But when you can live your life knowing that you have fulfilled the reason why God has put you here, that is the ultimate satisfaction. And Ron, what you're doing with the demonstrations out there every week, and you've got to connect the dots between what he did at Harvard with President Gay and the continuation of things that are going on. And you can't separate any of this stuff because it all knits together. There is an overt agenda that these people have. And right down to today, this man telling women that if you have a baby, we'll give you $5,000 because they're afraid that their numbers are dropping. And they are the minority of the world. They've always been the minority of the world. They'll never be the majority of the world. It's impossible. But I also think of the fact that the Roman Catholic Church years ago told people it was a sin to use contraception. So they're even more so outnumbered than ever before. But all of these things are linked together with Project 2025. This South African they brought here from the apartheid system. But we have to continue doing what we do. I remember Minister Farrakhan said at the Million Man March, stop talking about what the white man is doing. What are you doing?
That's it.
What are you doing? What are we doing to counteract, offset, and to prevent their agenda from moving forward? That is more important than complaining about what's going on.
Well, I always give a frame of reference to what we've learned from our past. John Lewis, which you talked about, Reverend Sharpton, and Farrakhan, but mainly Malcolm and Martin, the two of them. That's where because I'll be 84 this Sunday. And I look at myself and I say, praise God.
You get 85 punches.
Yeah.
Before we leave here.
Yeah. Oh, that's Brooklyn. Yeah, see, that's Brooklyn. It's Brooklyn. Yeah, I always got beat up when I went to Brooklyn. I always went by myself. That took me off. Don't let me talk about Brooklyn. But see, that's the survival kit, learning the good and the bad of our past and how we fought amongst each other. This has been the main problem, which we all recognize but don't know what to do about it. We don't seem to know about it. But getting to the point of following Martin and Malcolm, they both had a history of knowing God. To certain circumstances, they knew that we couldn't be as kind-hearted as Martin, and we couldn't be as Malcolm was on. I was on Malcolm's side. I didn't believe in being a punk, but I didn't believe in going down and sitting on a lunch counter and have somebody beat me in the head.
No.
But I spent that 4-year period, 60 to 64, in the Marine Corps. So I didn't participate in any of that. So I didn't even know what it was like to have somebody hit you upside the head and not do anything. That, to me, was crazy. But that's what got us ahead, to show the hypocrisy of the American theme. We're talking about Constitution and going in other countries and starting wars to keep this America free. That update ourselves today, and we've got a criminal in the White House trying to destroy America. Look at what he's doing to Ukraine, claiming that the Ukrainians started the war. We've got a madman in the White House. And DEI, your main theme, is diversity, equity, and inclusion, which started from George Floyd. Let's start the beginning of that and why we had it. Because Rev says we were denied. Well, all we doing is fighting for the Constitution. And look at what Trump is doing with the Constitution. I think God's showing us a way that we have to come to our spiritual nature and learn to promote love energy again. That's how we got through it the first time. Martin was loving people. You know, Malcolm was there to say, if you don't take his course, you got to deal with me.
Right.
Because I ain't taking no stuff from you. But in the middle, we came out of the war, our war, and learned from the two of them that you got to love and you got to fight. You know, when we fight, we win. That's our theme today. So you as a youth, having not gone through that, the struggle of Martin and Malcolm, what do you see when it comes to light to you, the hypocrisy of America? There's one. The hypocrisy of America.
I think that I've had my own, if we're talking about an early Malcolm and Martin's clash of ideologies, I've had my own battles with other activists in the community. And it is, you know, one thing to read about it, right? Read about others' struggle, but it's another thing to go through it yourself. You know, and my stance is, if we're all fighting for Black liberation, you know, we should not be trying to get into car accidents as we're on the road towards liberation. You stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine.
Right.
And you might have a different method, but if we have the same vision, why should we be fighting?
Right.
And that was always a question that I had. But now that I'm in it, I can see, oh, people are fighting not necessarily because they want liberation, but because they want attention. Because they feel threatened by another's agenda, even though it's to achieve Black liberation, they are afraid that someone else will be more noticed for a particular issue than themselves. And so it becomes this ego tripping, and instead of let us help the people, it becomes let me be the person because I want to negotiate to get a check from a company or a check from a family or a check from the media rather than checking the system. And the reality of understanding that people will call you all kinds of things outside of your name just because they're threatened by you. And the first enemy that you wind up fighting is people that look like you instead of fighting the system that's against you. So the question is, how do we bring everybody in together for the same fight, even though they're different ideologies? And I think that it's important to have different strategies to decay the system. No group of everybody is going to follow one leader. Right. It doesn't exist. Right. That's why you have so many pastors that are successful, because everybody's not going to follow the same pastor because they don't like the way he preaches or the way he talks or the way he dresses, something, you know. But it's fine because there are lots of pastors for everybody. And the same thing with the leadership and civil rights. However, we can look and examine the 60s and the civil rights fights there. We can examine the fights that happened during Frederick Douglass's time. But I think that what is key is to actually not get involved in the pettiness, to not allow yourself to be dragged into the division, because what the enemy does is they create situations where they can divide and conquer us.
That's always been it.
And they use the media, they use all kinds of situations so that the question is, how do we not get baited into those things? And how do we continue to keep respect? And that people don't take kindness for weakness, because, you know, I'm very nice to folk, but when people are not nice to me, I have to be what I need to be for you to be able to respect the situation. I do believe that this moment is a good time to be alive in America. Growing up, I idolized two people outside of my mother and Jesus, which was Bruce Lee and Dr. King. And
What a
love watching
contrast.
Enter the Dragon and Fist of Fury. Still today. But also, I was very enamored by the life of Dr. King. And I thought that everybody felt the way I felt. And the older I got, I realized, oh, that's just me. Oh, everybody feels like I'm an old head because I'm really into Dr. King. And I always felt that Dr. King's nonviolent movement was a very close representation of what Jesus did in the Bible,
Exactly.
right? And the other prophets.
Exactly.
Right.
And I felt that being on the street is where I read most of the prophets were. And I'm not saying there wasn't synagogues and temples, but most of the work happened where the people were.
Right.
And so, I was always enamored with that type of ministry. And I had prayed to the Lord, hey, I want to get involved. And he told me, there's a guy in Harlem doing this, and that's when I joined. But I could have never have dreamt that I would be a part of the fight in this manner, even though I always have been doing it in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that as a young person in this time, watching what I'm watching on the news and shaking my head like, is this really happening? I'm excited because I know that the arch of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I believe in God not because of what I've read or what anybody's told me or the story of Abraham or Moses, but my own story.
Right.
And I also know that as real as God is, that He stands for righteousness. But wherever I read the Bible or wherever I looked in my story, God has always used a storm to get people to the other side of the river. So we just have to buckle down in this storm, fight through, not give up, so that we can get to the other side of where we need to be.
Well, you can see the base of all our energies is God. And this is what my main theme is. That's why I say at the end of each show, I should start off, the God in me loves the God in you. And the devil in me is protecting me against the devil in you.
Protecting.
So
protecting me.
We just passed.
Well, that's my defense mechanism. That's my take on it. That's my personal take. Because my name means worker for Christ, Gilchrist. I was told that when I was 14, the same age as Emmett Till. But I couldn't understand how people were as nasty as they were, especially seeing what happened to Emmett Till. That was a complete mind blower to me, because I was in an integrated school and half of the school was white, and most of them Jewish. So these were people struggling through 10 years after the Holocaust. So they were privy to what we were suffering. And I wound up with a Jewish mentor that took hold of me when I was 14 and brought me up and taught me his business. That was my training, my mentor. I joined him at 13, and then when Emmett Till happened, he really grasped my future and taught me the ways of photography. And that's where I got my first realization that there were nice white people out there, and especially Jewish people. Because they were part of our movement in the 60s.
Guys, I need to conclude. I do want to thank you for the opportunity. And as we pass this Holy Week, we are reminded that the powerful Jesus who went through a Good Friday rose on a Sunday morning. And all of that happened, as you said, because of he was betrayed, right? So at this time in this country, I feel like we're being sold out. Jesus was sold out by his beloved disciple.
Right.
And as terrible as it was, as terrible as it is to go through a Good Friday, Judas, his name in Hebrew, right? Judas doesn't exist; it's a Greek name, but Judas's name is Judah.
Right.
And we all know that Judah is a big name in the Jewish culture because it's one of the 12 tribes. But the story of Jesus being sold out for silver, the first prophet to be sold out for silver was Joseph.
Yeah.
And Joseph was sold out by his brother
brothers.
named
Ah,
Judah.
Judah.
right,
That's
right.
right.
So the stories overlap in many ways. And we know that in the story of Joseph, where he's sold into slavery, that God uses that moment to elevate him to the point where when he is reunited with the brothers that sold him onto slavery and death, that he says that what you meant for evil, God meant for good.
Right.
And when our ancestors were brought to these shores, we knew that what the devil meant for evil, what the system meant for evil, that God was going to turn it around anyhow. That when they said you were meant to be slaves, God turns it around and said, before I be a slave, I'd rather be buried in my grave. So we've been resisting. And as we've been the people of resistance, we will continue to be that in this age. And again, I thank you for the opportunity of this platform. God bless you. And as always, the Christ in me will always love the Christ in y'all.
And
right,
let me say
amen.
this about your comments about these stories. Mainly, the basic problem was jealousy.
Well, that
The
Jealousy.
is
American government is jealous of us, huh? You saw it.
Yeah, of course. White people have always been jealous of us
but the spirit.
because we are the spiritual people of the planet. Jesus was black. People in the Bible were black. We don't know that. We're fighting. We are the people that we've been waiting for. We're the Christ. If you're a Christ-like figure, act like it. Be a loving individual. This is what our achievement should be, being a righteous individual. Right, my brother?
Don't
A
forget.
righteous troublemaker.
A righteous
Righteous
troublemaker.
troublemaker.
That's it.
John
Power
Lewis.
to the people.
John Lewis. Good
I
trouble.
love it, man. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ron.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Safe home.
All right.
You know, they
Now, you see Ron how
yeah, but you know that it was Judah that prevented Joseph from being killed. His brothers sold him to the Egyptians.
right?
They put him down in a hole,
Right.
and when the Egyptian caravan came by, they sold their brother to the Egyptians.
Right.
And they were going to kill him. But Judah said, no. We can't kill our brother and tell our father, we can't go back and tell our father anything like that. But we can lie to him in terms of, we can say that a lion killed him.
Yeah, that's right.
So Judah preserved Joseph. And the thing about Joseph is that Joseph never complained to all that he went through. They were jealous of him.
Yeah.
Judah protected
Right.
his baby brother
Right.
from death. Judah, Jesus, the Lion of Judah. He preserved the seed, and years later, they now are in a famine, and they come down into Egypt because
And
Joseph,
there's Joseph.
in a dream, was told of the famine.
Right.
And remember, Joseph spent years in prison for alleged rape, attempted rape. That's how he wound up in prison.
Because he wouldn't make love to.
Right, with Potiphar's wife.
Right.
So she
was it-
falsely
what was the guy's
accused him,
name?
Potiphar.
Potiphar.
So Potiphar allowed Joseph to run all of his business. But when the wife accused him, he went into prison, and he was in prison for years. It wasn't.
But the wife was after him. He was.
She was after him. He was not. He
And
said
she
he would not
lied on him.
defile. Right. He would not defile himself or her marriage, or because of what Potiphar had done for him. So he wound up in prison. The word finally gets back to Pharaoh. Joseph is brought out to explain the dream. There's a famine coming. You have to prepare now so that when the famine comes, there will be food for all of Egypt. The famine comes, Joseph's brothers come down into Egypt to get food. Their father is elderly, and Joseph is sitting there, and they initially do not recognize Joseph.
Right.
It's
This
been
is
so
years
many
later.
years.
How many years later?
Right. He's a grown man now.
Yeah.
And he's second only to Pharaoh. Long story, the family is reunited. Joseph doesn't take any animosity towards his brothers, but he was sold into slavery so that he could save his family years later. And this is what we as a people need to understand. We're fighting and killing each other in the streets. An elderly woman was shot to death in Harlem last night by some young
The youth.
Idiots. But this is the thing. We spend all this time killing each other. When the person who could be the savior to you in your given situation, you've killed them off. How many young people are fighting each other? You and I are fighting. Ideal story. I go to Grand Central to meet my cousin after 9/11. He worked for Metro North. And I'm coming through, it's 5:30, and I see him with another guy talking, and they're laughing. I walk up, hey, you guys are having a good time. Oh, yeah, you know, he stepped on my foot, and we got into a conversation. Oh, he stepped on your foot, you're not fighting? No. He says, well, wait a minute, you know him? I said, I know both of you. They said, well, what are the odds of that? I said, the odds are greater. I said, Graham, I want you to meet Bruce. Bruce, this is Graham. This is your cousin. They were two cousins who had never met.
Oh, wow.
One born in Barbados, one in the United States. They had never met. They bump into each other. One steps on the other's foot, and they're talking and laughing instead of fighting like two knuckleheads, and they were cousins. This is what we are doing to each other. In the Bible, it says, thou shalt not kill. It means you do not engage in fratricide. You do not kill your own people. There's a lot of killing in the Bible. But God told the Israelites, you do not kill each other. And unfortunately,
that the Israelites were black.
Our young folk are killing off their future saviors, doctors, the people that can help them to save their mother, even their own children. Later on, if we just turn around and go to school, pursue something which will embolden our people, give us the strength that we need to move forward.
That's because we lack respect for one another.
Right.
Because of the way we've been bamboozled and brainwashed throughout our history. And this is the training that we need to turn to, teaching us about our history. Now, what we've done here today is we've given you an example of the youth getting along with the elderly and seeing a common ground. This should happen amongst all of us. To see that the enemy is Donald Trump and the white supremacists that back him. White supremacy isn't a new version.
Not at all.
It's nothing. It's throughout history, mankind. So it's nothing new. And we should get used to that and understand whose side we're on. We're on God's side. And if you don't bring out that loving energy inside of you, it doesn't matter what color you are. It'll still be no useful to the planet. Or maybe useful to you and your greed and selfishness, and that's who survives. All right, if you think that way, that's the way it'll be. So no matter what color you are, you need to come to yourself, your purpose on the planet. All of us are human. There's no race. There's one race, the human race.
Yeah.
And you got to tune into that. And we're given the same ingredients. I said it at the huddle last night. I put it simply. We're all human, and we're all given the ingredients of God and the devil. And you're given the choice of which way you want to go. Now, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you decide which side of you want to go, that's the best person for you. That's the person you see in yourself. I say this all the time, but I mean, that's a personal thing. That's what you have to accept personally. Now, if you go through our history as a black people, and when you find out that we are the original people, that we're not N-words and not low down and dirty, and you don't treat yourself like that, you treat yourself like you're a gift from God, which all humans are when they come out of the womb, and men learn to teach women like they're the human gods that they are. You come out of the womb and you spend half the rest of your life, part of you, trying to get back into the womb. And this is called procreation. Procreation energy. I mean, men have a problem. You know, I know I've always looked at my mother as my God. She's always been a guardian angel on my shoulder. And that's who I consider my God. Because I know she's helped me throughout my existence. I remember when she died, I hated God for a long time. I said,
But wait a minute, you said she was your God, but you hated God.
I mean, the God who supposedly produced her. I believe in God. I know a God of everybody. But I'm saying my personal God was my mommy. And she's always been my guardian angel, too. But God, human-wise, is the producer of life, and that's a woman, not a man. You plant a seed, but you can plant a seed in any woman.
Yeah, but a woman can't plant a seed. She needs the seed.
Of course. So it's
let's
a
remember,
unity.
You have
God is one and the same.
right. He's male and female.
All
He
right.
doesn't need.
But I'm saying, as
like
a
we do.
human male, to get through this nonsense of persecuting and demeaning women, like most nations and worlds have done throughout history. You know, white supremacy. The white woman didn't get to vote until
Right. She was not equal.
1919.
So we know that equality did not come,
Really.
because that's why history is important. White women were just there to be told what to do.
Right.
Even during slavery, they knew their husbands were in a shack somewhere with a slave woman doing what they were doing.
Making money.
But their job was to keep
Producing.
this virtuous presentation
Right.
of purity. Well, and that was a lie, too, because people don't know that 40% of all slave owners in this country were women, not men. 40%
Ooh,
of all
I never
slave
heard
owners,
that.
yes, were women. And those white women
Why would they
were
be?
victimizing black males sexually in deviant acts, not just sexually, but in deviant acts. They don't talk about it. George Washington's wife was the wealthy one. George Washington owned about 6 or 8 slaves. His wife owned around 80. And
never
your
heard
wealth
that.
was determined by the number, just like cattle. All right, your wealth was determined by the number of slaves you owned. 40% of all women were slave owners and major slave owners. And when it came to marriage, they had litigations because the man assumed that this property now would be his to embolden him. When the fact is, the women said, no, this is my stuff here.
I'm
This is
surprised
mine.
They had independence back then.
And they were fighting for their independence even back in the 1700s because of the financial capabilities that these women had that some of their husbands did not have.
Right.
And when you go
That's
back
hard
and
to
study the
believe.
history of slavery, it's not talked about. But white women were doing all kinds of stuff to black slaves in their plantations. There's a term, MF. We all know what MF means. All right? You're an MF. That's a literal phrase
Yeah.
because a young slave was taken to another
Blindfolded.
plantation.
Blindfolded.
He was taken back to that plantation to procreate with a woman years later after he became mature. And many times that woman that he was brought back to was his mother.
Or cousin or sister.
And that's where the term MF comes from.
Yeah. I heard that story.
That's what they did.
That's from
So the-
Hidden Colors.
The deviancy that is there. And we
Well-
need to know that Bible, Christianity is not a white man's religion at all, because Jesus wasn't black, Moses wasn't white, rather Moses, none of these people were white. Semitic people, Jews are not Semites. Semitic people have tan skin. St. Paul in the book of Acts is identified as a Nubian in the book of Acts when he went into Jerusalem to preach again and they tried to kill him. Preachers talk about, oh, they got Paul and he said to the Roman centurion, oh, he spoke to him in Greek and the centurion is like, you speak Greek? He says, yeah. He says, but we thought you were the Nubian, the Egyptian that led the rebellion.
Yeah.
Paul was
Yeah.
not white. None of those people were white.
Yeah. Well, that's how we've been bamboozled and lied to and divided and separated. Willie Lynch syndrome. That's a classic example of what being lied to. What we're being lied to today by Donald Trump. And look at the comparison to what's happening. This is what he's doing today. I tell you what, just run a video. That other one that you have in the works there, I think, was it DEI or was it which one was it?
Jordan should not have had to die.
hear it.
I strongly believe, as I've been stating, probably from day one, we have a mental health system that is broken.
Oh, this is,
When you have someone repeatedly going through that system, that's a signature of failure. And we need help in Albany and in the city council. We can't sit back and mourn the loss of someone that is caught up in this system when we're not taking the action every day. But a jury of his peers heard the case, saw all the facts and all the evidence, and made a decision. And I joined DA Braggs in stating that I respect the process.
We're devastated, upset, angry, hurt. Over and over again, we keep coming to the system, asking the system to let us know that our lives have value. Jordan Neely was choked to death by someone who didn't care. People was telling him to stop. Last week, the jury they couldn't decide on the top charge, but they come back this week and they give up on us.
I just want to say I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged.
And when I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, because thou givest him not warning, nor speaketh to warn the wicked of his wicked ways, his blood shall I require at thy hand.
I promised this family that we would get justice. We're still going to do that. We're going to move forward with our suit. The district attorney did a good job, but the jury in this case let us down.
I'm sorry to Dre. I'm sorry to Chris. I'm sorry that America has failed you. You've come here, you've shown discipline, you've shown strength, you've shown love, you've shown how to carry yourself with composure when you're facing this machine, this American judicial system that cannibalizes our people. There is no love for black people. There is no love in the system. How can you make a moral appeal to a people that have no moral code?
I stood here 10 years ago because they did not give justice to my son with the chokehold. I fought hard to get the anti-chokehold bill passed, which did pass. But it shouldn't only be for police officers, it should be for civilians also. No one deserves to be choked to death. No one. And you know, we're in that courtroom and people are cheering for the verdict. They made the loudest noise, the judge did nothing. But when his father spoke out, they put him out the courtroom. Is that justice? Or what? We can't allow this to keep going on. We have to fight this system.
Here we are.
Welcome back.
We'll give you a countdown. We'll start the countdown. 10.
Welcome back. That was Penny. What was his first name?
I don't know Penny's name, but I remember Jordan Neely, the
Jordan
victim.
Neely's murderer, who was a Trumper. They celebrated, and Trump invited him to a football game, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, where he praised what he did. This is another chokehold victim, like Eric Gardner. But when Eric Gardner's case, the cop knew Eric Gardner, and that was a personal beef. Same thing with George Floyd. the cop knew George Floyd, and they had a personal beef. But with Penny and
Neely,
they didn't know each other. It was a plain out murder of somebody, ex-Marine. He was just trying out what he had learned in school, Marine Corps school, how to kill people. Because that's what they teach you, how to kill. That's what, you're a paid killer, a Marine. That's what they're for. That's what they're hired for. That's what you join the Marine Corps for, to go out and kill. So he was just doing his job. And being a racist and a Trumper, it was necessary to eliminate this black man who was causing a ruckus. And he had the opportunity to, he's a vigilante, saving the other people from this, whatever he called them.
There are mentally ill people all over New York City.
Yeah, but he wasn't from New York.
If you're so scared of mentally ill people, you don't belong in New York City. You need to stay in your neighborhood, wherever you live on Long Island. Stay there, where quote unquote the more balanced people live. All right, like the man from Lido Beach that was killing all the women out there. Stay out there.
Well, you didn't hear what Eric Adams said about homeless in the beginning of that piece there. He said that he was doing his job.
The Nazis eliminated all mentally defective people from their culture.
Right.
And I have been quoted in the newspapers because of that statement with regard to NYPD in these killings. I left my office and went to a scene at 14th Street and Lexington Avenue years ago where they had what's called an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person. And this had been going on for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. They were trying to get this guy under control, and my office was in Union Square, and I walked to the station there at 14th and Lex. And the four court officers with batons, and they got the guy handcuffed to one pole, and everybody has a, no, what are you doing? Oh, he's an EDP detective. I said, right, but we don't beat people down because they're emotionally disturbed. We're not Nazi Germany yet, okay? I ordered them off the train, and I spoke with the man. I got him calmed down, realizing it wasn't as emotional as it was spiritual. Understanding that through ministry, there are people who are demonically possessed. They're not mentally, they're demonically possessed, and the scripture speaks of those cases. So I had to deal with him in that vein and have the demon speak out of him and then order the demon out of him so I could take charge of the physical being, which is what I did. And the officers were like, how'd you do that? I said, we have dunamis and exousia, we have power and authority, but this is spiritual. This doesn't come from the state. And I walked the man calmly into the command. Jordan Neely posed a threat to nobody. He said he didn't care if he lived or died and all of that, you know.
Did he actually say that?
Yeah, he said, I don't care if I live or die. But that doesn't give anybody the right to kill him. It's not for you to make an assessment that this man should die. That's not your function, that's not your, and I don't care where you serve, what branch of the military you served in, you have no right to make a determination as to whether a person should live or die if they pose no threat to your physical being.
But he was a white supremacist, and that's what he felt was necessary.
And
so they'll say,
right.
Why would Trump back him up?
Trump said to the cops in Long Island years ago, bang their heads against the door as you put them in.
White supremacists.
And the chief of Nassau said, if you do that, you will be fired. He told those officers. All right? So looking at this case, and what is more disturbing about the case is the DAs handling these cases. That is my issue. I wrote a paper years ago when Eric Garner was murdered. And what I wrote then is the same thing with regard to Jordan Neely. My nephew and Lennon Edwards and his brother Dante Mills were handling the case for the Neely family. They got numerous threats from Klansmen and other white supremacist groups, threatening to kill them right in their office on 34th Street on the west side because they were defending this family. Well, not defending it, but representing the family. And I called Eric Adams and I told him, if anything happens to either of them, all hell is going to break loose in this city. All right? And it's not going to be coming from the police department. If anything happens to my nephew or his partner, as a result of them representing the family, it's a wrap. Thank God nobody messed with them. I'm not here to play games with people.
Yeah, they were actually threatened by the
They were
Klan?
threatened numerous times. They had calls on their phones, letters were sent, all kinds of stuff.
Never heard about it, though.
They went ahead to do what they had to do. All right? The focus was not about crazy white people. The focus was representing the family. But the biggest detriment is the failure of the district attorneys in this city to prosecute people that have intentionally murdered black people. That is my problem, because in this paper that I wrote, I'm sorry Ashley could not be here, but I have delineated, no, I'm not an attorney, but I have to use law in the enforcement of the law. And these DAs are not charging the people with the charges they should be charged with in order to get the convictions that they could easily get. And the DA in Staten Island on Eric Garner's case, he presented virtually nothing to the grand jury, so it came back no true bill. And where is he now? He's sitting in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah. Well, we see how white supremacy reigns supreme, and the good guys still fighting the good fight. That's why we're here, and that's what we will continue to do. Present to you your history and what you can do to fight the good fight.
And brother, this is why I always say we don't need basketball players. We don't need football players.
We need everybody.
We need our young
everybody.
people to study and apply themselves to help protect our communities, because a football can't protect you.
Everything can protect you. It's a good way to go. If you can do it well, do it well. Whatever you do. Don't restrict them to anything. You have to find out what your calling is. It might be football, but make sure you do it righteously. It might be a sweeper, but do that the best you can. That's what Martin said. Whatever you do, do it the best you can, and take pride in what you do. And you will come out right, and we'll all come out right. The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. God bless. Power to the people. Right? You got to use football. You can't